Blood on concrete smells like metal and corporate negligence. I knew something was coming when Vince leaned back in that conference room chair, kicked his Aldo loafers up like he was posing for a low-rent GQ spread, and said, "Your safety protocols are too expensive, sweetheart." That's what he called me. Not Rebecca, not Miss Myers, not the only person in this damn building who knows how many PSI it takes to turn an unbolted belt drive into a guillotine. Just sweetheart. I'd spent 3 weeks drafting a revised hazard mitigation plan for the warehouse floor. 48 grand. That's what it would have cost them. Not a palace. Not a marble fountain shaped like OSHA logo. Just reinforced guardrails, new brake sensors, and 10 hours of mandatory retraining for forklift operators, some of whom were driving like fast and furious extras on Monster at 7 a.m. Vince read the first page, flipped it shut like it offended his golf schedule, and barked to the room so her big plan is duct tape and warning signs. "Jesus, Rebecca, are we hiring a compliance officer or a kindergarten teacher?" The other execs laughed. One actually clapped. I smiled, took notes, highlighted my own name on the corner of the packet before sliding it back into my folder. That's what you do when you're a woman in steel-toe boots surrounded by men in overpriced cologne. You learn to grin while memorizing every damn slight. Truth is, I didn't do it for them. I did it for the guys on the line, the ones who called me boss lady and offered me half their burrito at lunch. The ones who actually read the safety updates I posted in the break room. Those guys mattered. Vince didn't. By the way, speaking of things that matter, 97% of folks listening to these stories never hit that subscribe button. I ain't mad, just mildly heartbroken. If you've made it this far and your fingers still work, tap that little button so I can finally hit my first 10,000 subs and maybe earn enough to buy my own damn warning signs. Anyway, after the meeting, Vince had the nerve to send me a smiling thumbs up emoji in Slack. No context, just that. The digital version of patting me on the head like I'd just colored inside the lines. What he didn't know was I already saw it coming. The budget meeting was the appetizer. The quarterly cost review was the entree. Dessert? That came Friday at 4:45 p.m. when HR summoned me into conference room C, the one with the broken blinds and that fake fern in the corner that smells like printer ink and betrayal. "This isn't performance-related," the HR rep said. She had the sincerity of a Roomba and the warmth of a DMV sneeze guard. "It's about synergy, alignment, evolving roles." I asked if my role was evolving out of the building or just into the void. They slid the severance envelope across the table like a dirty plate. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I did something worse. I smiled, took the envelope, walked out. And at exactly 5:03 p.m., I opened my laptop at home, plugged in my backup drive, and started copying every goddamn report I'd written over the last 6 years. Not because I wanted revenge. Not yet. But because I knew that someday, someone would want to read them. And when they did, they'd see every date, every ignored warning, every deprioritized action item Vince had quietly marked as resolved without ever lifting a finger. I didn't burn bridges. I just made sure mine had a fire alarm installed. Back then, I thought that would be the end of it, but concrete's funny. It remembers blood, it remembers pressure. And pretty soon it would start talking. The Friday they canned me, the coffee tasted burnt, and the office smelled like stale toner and fake empathy. Vince strutted through the cubicles like he was on his way to a ribbon-cutting ceremony, not a firing squad. He gave me a half smile, the kind of look you'd toss at a stray cat right before calling animal control. That morning, the company held its quarterly optimization alignment, Vince's pet phrase for slash and burn budgeting. Half the staff tuned in over Zoom with their cameras off, pretending to take notes while probably scrolling Zillow for escape plans. I sat in the back of the conference room with my notepad closed and my gut clenched, watching him highlight redundancies in overhead roles with non-revenue outcomes. Translation: Rebecca talks too much about safety and not enough about profit. He called me out by title, not name. We've seen stagnation in adaptive flexibility across certain compliance functions. In an agile environment, we need proactive collaborators, not procedural anchors. Someone coughed. No one spoke. At 4:27 p.m., HR pinged me. "Could we meet before end of day?" Room C again, always room C. Might as well have nailed my name to the door like a reverse employee of the month plaque. Inside sat Madison from HR, fresh-faced, polite, emotionally bulletproof. She was wearing those blue light glasses and a smile that had been practiced in a mirror. "Rebecca, this isn't personal. We're just shifting gears. It's about synergy and aligning to our forward-thinking vision." "Which part of that vision includes amputated limbs on the floor?" I asked. She blinked. Either she didn't understand or wasn't paid to, probably both. She slid over a manila envelope with a severance package so bland it could have been written by AI. 4 weeks pay. 1 month of Cobra. NDA clause stapled like an afterthought. I flipped through it while Madison kept talking about transitions and new beginnings like I was graduating, not getting tossed out of a moving vehicle. "You're welcome to take a moment to process this," she said. I didn't need a moment. I needed a flash drive. I walked out, past the vending machines and the motivational posters. Teamwork makes the dream work, and down the back stairwell so I wouldn't have to look anyone in the eye. I didn't want pity. I didn't want hugs or tears or awkward sympathy nods. I wanted air. At home, I poured a glass of boxed wine, powered on my laptop, the one they didn't know I kept synced to my work account, and got to work. Over 6 years, I'd built my own little safety arc. Emails, photos, time-stamped incident reports, drafts of protocols that never got greenlit, memos Vince accidentally deleted, screenshots of Slack threads where I warned about equipment fatigue, thermal cracks in the roller bearings, moisture pooling around the compressor pads. Every time they ignored me, I made a copy. Every time Vince rolled his eyes, I made a folder. Call it paranoia, call it foresight, call it the only kind of self-defense they don't teach you in HR orientation. I labeled the main archive break glass in case of karma. Then I zipped it, backed it up, and uploaded it to 2 encrypted drives, one under my bed, one in a secure cloud. I didn't cry that night, didn't scream into the void. I just watched the upload bar crawl forward while I microwaved leftover meatloaf and stared at my blank TV screen. The disbelief had calcified. Now it was resolve. They thought firing me would make me disappear. But I'd spent too many years studying pressure points. And the thing about pressure? Apply it right and something always snaps. The Monday after they let me go, I updated my LinkedIn with the kind of neutered optimism people expect when your job's been yanked out from under you like a cheap rug. Former compliance and safety, lead passionate about workplace integrity and systems that protect people. What I wanted to write was, fired for caring more about human limbs than quarterly margins. Currently seeking revenge or employment, whichever hires first. Within an hour, sympathy started dripping in like leaky faucet water. Messages from coworkers, some I liked, some who hadn't said 5 words to me in the past year, started clogging my inbox. Can't believe they did that. Place feels weird without you. Let us know where you land next. Someone's gonna be lucky to have you. It was all very cumbaya with a backhanded violin. No one offered a job. No one mentioned Vince. They just wanted to tap the thoughts and prayers button and move on with their Tuesday. But then there was one message from Carlos, the floor manager on the North Line. Gruff guy. Always smelled like WD-40 and peanut butter crackers. Barely used punctuation. His message just read, they didn't calibrate the CAT 980s last week. Was on your schedule. No one's touched them. Short. Bare. It landed in my gut like a sack of bricks. CAT 980s were forklifts. Industrial grade. Powerful enough to lift a full pallet of engine blocks. Dumb enough to kill someone if the hydraulic stabilizers weren't right. The calibration was due. Overdue now. I'd put it in the plan Vince never read. I stared at that message for a long time. Fingers hovering over the keyboard. Type what exactly? Tell maintenance to check it, make noise? Call OSHA? No, not my circus, not my monkeys. That was the whole point of being fired, wasn't it? You don't owe them your breath, let alone your brain. Still, I couldn't shake it. I'd lie awake at night picturing those forklifts moving like sleepy elephants through tight corners, loaded to hell, driven by temps who didn't know the difference between a soft break and a catastrophic failure. One snapped hose, one cracked joint, one missed torque spec. And it wouldn't be Vince who got crushed under that oversight. It'd be some 22-year-old kid just trying to pay rent. I went for a walk to shake it off. Past a construction crew jackhammering a sidewalk, all of them wearing neon vests and big earmuffs. One guy wasn't, just standing there sipping coffee 10 feet from an active drop zone. I almost yelled, didn't just watched. That's what it felt like now, watching. I wasn't part of it anymore. I was on the outside, pressing my face to the glass while a slow-motion train derailment played out behind soundproof walls. I told myself it wasn't my job anymore. Told myself I had to let go. But you don't just unknow things. You don't spend years mapping every risk vector in a death trap of a warehouse and suddenly forget where the sharp edges are. Guilt is a funny thing. It doesn't scream. It whispers. It pokes you in the ribs when you're trying to eat. It reminds you that if someone gets hurt, really hurt, you won't be able to say you didn't see it coming. And you won't be able to say you didn't warn them, because you did. They just didn't listen. And now the silence was starting to creak. It was a Wednesday when the headline hit. Local worker hospitalized in industrial accident at Westside Fulfillment Hub. The photo was stock. A grainy shot of an ambulance parked beside a warehouse could have been anywhere. The article itself was 2 paragraphs long. No names, no details, just vague PR dribble from the company. We are cooperating fully with authorities and taking this incident very seriously. But the address was unmistakable. My old warehouse, Building 4B. I read the article 3 times, blinking hard. The timestamp on the story was 7:42 a.m. The injury happened during the morning shift, right about the time they'd be firing up the old belt lines, the same ones I flagged last quarter for irregular tension and worn shear pins. The same ones Vince said could last another year if we just greased them right. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Janice in inventory control. No words, just a photo. Caution tape flapping in the breeze. A fire truck angled across the loading dock. Emps clustered around a stretcher, where someone lay flat and motionless, covered to the chin, blood smeared across the concrete like red chalk. I felt my knees go soft. Janice followed up, 23-year-old temp. First week on the job, name's Devin. I dropped my phone. He was a kid, just a kid. Probably hadn't even figured out where the break room snacks were yet. And now he'd left part of his body on the floor because Vince thought new belt drives weren't cost-effective. I sat down hard on the couch. The air was thick, like breathing through a wet towel. I couldn't decide if I wanted to scream or throw up or punch through drywall. This wasn't abstract anymore. It wasn't hypotheticals or ignored memos or Slack messages left unread. This was blood, real blood. On the same floor I used to walk every morning with a clipboard and a pit in my stomach. I pulled up my archive, found the file labeled Drive Shaft Faults Recurring Issues. There it was. March 12th. Belt 3B showing excessive vibration. Torque variance exceeds safe margins. Recommend full replacement before end of quarter. I had emailed that exact sentence to Vince. Twice. CC'd Madison from HR the second time just for cover. He never replied. Now a 23-year-old had paid for that silence with whatever piece of him didn't make it into the stretcher. I couldn't sit still. I paced the living room until my heels went numb. Turned on the TV. Muted it, opened the windows. Closed them again. Checked my phone. No new messages, just Janice's photo burned into my screen and my skull. That night I lay awake listening to nothing. No traffic, no wind, just silence stretched so tight it felt like it could snap in half. This wasn't my circus anymore. But that blood, that was mine to carry. And I knew this wasn't the end of it. Because if Devin's family asked questions, they'd want answers. Buried somewhere in my laptop were all the ones the company never wanted anyone to see. The voicemail came at 9:12 a.m. on a Thursday. I was halfway through a bowl of stale cereal and watching dust collect on the windowsill when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then I heard the transcript notification pop up. First two lines read, "Hi, this is Franklin Mendez with the Department of Labor. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your previous role in workplace safety at Westside Fulfillment. Please call back." I didn't breathe for a few seconds, just stared at the words like they were glowing hot. Then I played the message. "We've reviewed initial documentation surrounding the recent injury at your former employer's facility. Your name appeared in internal correspondence. We'd appreciate your cooperation in this matter." That's when it clicked. Evan's family had filed a lawsuit. And someone, maybe his mom, maybe a lawyer, maybe a janitor with a conscience, had found my name, somewhere in a buried chain of emails, somewhere in one of the drafts Vince thought he scrubbed clean. For the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was evidence. I called Mendez back, got his voicemail, left a calm, professional message that barely concealed the adrenaline vibrating in my throat, and I opened my laptop. The folder labeled break glass in case of karma hadn't been touched since the night I walked out of room C. Now I opened it like a surgeon unwrapping old x-rays. Every file had its own ugly memory. A photo of Belt 3B tickets fraying track, dated and timestamped. A Slack message from me to Vince, recommend full replacement before Q2. Current vibration margin exceeds safe parameters. His reply, too expensive. Do a patch job, will budget next fiscal. I highlighted the keywords, patch job, next fiscal, too expensive. There were more. A PDF memo I'd sent company-wide titled, urgent, forklift calibration backlog the read receipts. Vince never opened it. I found the big one, the internal safety audit report I ran 3 months before they fired me. 42 pages, detailed hazard analysis, risk scores, employee testimonies, recommendations, and the signature page. Vince never signed. Instead, there was a follow-up email from him telling me to streamline the tone because phrasing like imminent harm could spook the investors. I laughed. It was sharp and hollow and ugly. That laugh, the one you give when you realize you were right and it cost someone else a hospital bed. I started printing, highlighting, annotating. I didn't just want to talk to Mendez. I wanted to walk into that meeting with a dossier thick enough to slap someone across the face with. No more second guessing. No more telling myself it wasn't my business. They'd made it my business the moment they buried my reports. And now it was time to dig them back up and shove them under a spotlight. Devin's blood had stained that concrete, but it had also cracked the silence open wide. And I was done being quiet. Conference room smelled like lemon cleaner and legal dread. I met Franklin Mendez on the 3rd floor of the federal building downtown, in one of those generic interview spaces where the fluorescent lights buzz like they're filing complaints too. He greeted me with a firm handshake and the kind of expression that said I've seen worse, but not by much. He didn't waste time. "Miss Myers," he began, laying a folder flat on the table like it was a deck of cards at a poker game. "I want to thank you for coming in. We've already reviewed a good portion of the documentation you submitted. Very detailed work." I nodded, hands folded tight on my lap. I was thorough by necessity. He tilted his head. "Yes, that's clear." Then he said it, not as an accusation, not even as a question. Just a quiet, exhausted fact. "Your reports were too detailed to have been ignored by accident." I didn't respond right away. I just reached into my messenger bag and pulled out a fresh manila envelope. Inside, a printed copy of an internal memo Vince had edited last December. The The original version included my highlighted warnings about the torque failures, the shear pin fatigue, and the fact that Belt 3B had exceeded its safe cycle life by nearly 2 years. The edited version, all that gone. Sanitized like a crime scene. Compare paragraph 3, I said, sliding the packet across the table. Mendez did, line by line. You could see the shift in his jaw as the weight of it sank in. He didn't say anything at first, just uncapped his pen and made a small mark in the corner. He didn't have to say it. We both knew what we were looking at, willful negligence dressed in corporate business casual. I've also got emails showing he flagged my reports as noise in internal threads. I added, voice calm, even. One of them was forwarded to Madison in HR. He nodded. We have those. Of course they did. He kept his tone professional, but his eyes were tracking me like a chess piece he hadn't expected to move this fast. I'll be honest, Miss Myers, he said, leaning forward, fingers tented. Cases like this don't usually come with a narrative this clean, or this documented. I didn't smile. I didn't flinch. I just said, that's because I knew they'd come for me eventually. I wasn't trying to be the hero, I just wanted a paper trail when they made me the scapegoat. He exhaled slowly, eyes flicking toward the folder again. We may be requesting further assistance from you as this moves forward, he said. If that's something you're comfortable with, I nodded. It is. But even as I agreed, I felt the walls shifting, like a tremor running under the carpet, because now I wasn't just a witness, I was a problem. People like Vince don't take kindly to problems with receipts. I walked out into the sunlight that afternoon feeling both taller and more exposed. Vindication tastes like cold steel, sharp, clean, and liable to cut both ways. By the time I got home, I already had 3 missed calls from a number I recognized, the company's legal counsel. They'd gotten wind, and I had no illusions they weren't calling to apologize. The email hit my inbox like a shot across the bow. Subject, urgent. Confidentiality reminder, former employment agreement from Legal at Westside Corpcom Body. Miss Myers, this is a formal notice that you remain bound by the terms of the non-disclosure and non-disparagement agreements signed during your employment with Westside Fulfillment, including clauses pertaining to internal documentation, proprietary protocols, and communication with third parties. Please govern yourself accordingly. No hello, no we hope you're well, just a quiet threat dressed up in lawyerese. I stared at it for a solid minute, the kind of stare that turns cold coffee into an afterthought. They were rattled, good, but I wasn't stupid. I knew what this was, the first flick of the corporate knife, testing the soft spots. They wanted me scared, gagged, buried under legal jargon and billable hour intimidation. So I replied with 3 lines. Please see the attached federal whistleblower protections under Section 11C of the OSH Act. My actions are protected in matters involving workplace safety violations and noncompliance. Contact my attorney going forward. No warmth, no fear, just steel. What I didn't expect, what no one warned me about, was the camera crew. As I stepped out of the Department of Labor building that afternoon, sun high and hot enough to melt your spine, a local news van was idling by the curb. The kind of van that feeds off headlines like warehouse safety horror and injured temp, missing fingers, mounting questions. I hadn't even made it halfway to the crosswalk before a young woman in heels too expensive for public service jogged up with a mic. Miss Myers, is it true you worked at Westside Fulfillment up until last month? I blinked. Excuse me. I've obtained internal reports suggesting you warned of the exact equipment failure that injured Devon R. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no, but the look I gave her said more than either. That evening my phone blew up. Not just texts, calls, Janice, Carlos, even Trevor from payroll. You were on Channel 4. They didn't say your name, but it was obviously you. One message from a number I didn't recognize simply read, "You're doing the right thing. Keep going." Another one said, "Vince is freaking out. Good, let him." But I'd be lying if I said the fear didn't snake its way in too, because adrenaline's a strange drug. It sharpens your focus while fraying your nerves. You feel like you could lift a truck, but also like you're one step away from throwing up in a potted plant. That night, I paced the living room while my printer churned out another set of documents. Redacted copies, backup drives, a new fireproof box shoved under my bed. This wasn't just a job I'd lost anymore. This was war by spreadsheet, by footage, by archived memos and policies they thought no one would care about. They wanted me buried under my own silence. Instead, I'd become the headline. And the coffin they tried to seal me in with that NDA, I just pried it back open. The first headline dropped Thursday morning. Westside Fulfillment suspends manager amid federal investigation into workplace injury. No names, but everyone inside that warehouse knew who it was. Vince, Mr. Synergy himself. By noon, my inbox was a digital riot. Emails with subject lines like, "Are you okay? Please don't burn it all down," and I had no idea it was this bad. Janice sent me a wall of text at 4 a.m. Guilt vomit. Carlos's message was one sentence, "You were right," and then there were the others. Quiet names I barely remembered. Line workers, temp staff, junior leads who'd never dared speak above a whisper when Vince barked. Now they were confessing by the dozens. Some were angry, "Why didn't you go public sooner?" Others were desperate, they're offering us scripts. HR says don't talk to media. What do we do? I didn't answer any of them, not right away, because one message stopped me cold. It came from a blocked number. No subject, just a single image attachment. A scan, blurry, cropped weird. Someone clearly printed it in a hurry, snapped a pic with their phone in a poorly lit break room, and bolted. It was an email chain, internal. Vince at the top. Two other names CC'd I didn't recognize, probably mid-level compliance ghosts. In the middle, Vince had typed, "She's overreacting again. If she had her way, we'd be handing out helmets with lunch. Safety is optional, she wasn't." I stared at those words for a long time. Safety is optional, she wasn't. Like I was a speed bump on his way to a bigger quarterly bonus. Like I wasn't a person, just a checklist item that got too loud. That line broke something in me. Not the way pain breaks you, more like how a dam breaks. Suddenly, everything I'd been holding in, everything I'd rationalized and bottled and told myself to let go of, it all rushed forward. They didn't just ignore my warnings, they buried them, mocked them, treated my concern for human lives like an HR inconvenience. They knew, and they laughed. Back at the warehouse, things were unraveling faster than they could staple new posters to the breakroom wall. Union reps filed formal demands for transparency. Late shift staged a walkout when they saw Devin's blood hadn't even been power washed from the concrete. A second injury, minor this time, was reported on the packing line. The company pushed a canned apology email to all staff. "We are listening. We are evolving. We are committed to a culture of safety." And in that same hour, someone forwarded me the internal memo suggesting all staff be reminded of their confidentiality obligations due to pending litigation. They were choking on their own spin cycle. Meanwhile, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad, a copy of every safety report I ever filed, and a highlighter that was starting to run dry. The more I traced the pattern, the clearer it became. Vince hadn't just been incompetent, he was calculated. He sanded off risk metrics like rust, doctored memos like bad paint jobs. He kept the budget lean by gambling with human bodies. And now that gamble had turned toxic. The match had been lit, and the break room was on fire. The courtroom wasn't dramatic. No gasps, no gavel slams. Just paperwork, murmurs, and the kind of recycled air that dries out your soul. The settlement was announced in low tones, $4.3 million in penalties for negligence, workplace safety violations, and failure to act on documented internal reports. I sat behind the table with the federal counsel, hands folded, expression still. I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to confirm what I'd always known. They buried the truth and someone bled for it. Vince didn't show up. He submitted his resignation 2 days before the public announcement, citing health concerns and a desire to spend more time with family. The irony of that line nearly made me laugh. No one bought it. News stations plastered his headshot across the 6 p.m. broadcast, cropped badly. Like even the JPEG was done with him. A local reporter noted the OSHA designation like it was a scarlet letter. Westside Fulfillment added to the severe violator enforcement program following a months-long investigation. The warehouse had become a case study, a cautionary tale, a graveyard of unchecked warnings. And me? I was done being the ghost in the machine. 2 weeks after the settlement, my phone rang. The number was familiar years ago. I'd interviewed there but turned down the offer. Back then, they didn't want a compliance officer who thought too defensively. Now, they offered me the role of head of compliance. Full authority, direct line to the board, no middlemen, no filters. The recruiter didn't mince words, your reputation speaks for itself. We want someone who never gets called dramatic for caring about lives. I accepted. There was no champagne toast, no victory montage, just a slow, quiet morning in a new building. A clean office with a view of the loading docks, no caution tape, no chaos. On the wall behind my desk, they'd already hung a frame. My original safety plan, the one Vince mocked, same fonts, same charts, same risk breakdowns, but this one had a new stamp on the bottom, approved, implemented, verified, and beneath that, my name, in thick black ink. I stood there for a long time just looking at it, not proud, not angry, just still. The kind of still that comes after a storm, when the wreckage clears and you finally breathe in air that doesn't taste like smoke. I didn't need revenge speeches, didn't need to dance on graves. I got something better, a door that stayed open, a team that listened, a plan that would never be buried again. Turns out, being too detailed, too rigid, and too damn loud, that's exactly what saves lives. Long live the protocol queen. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.